I then discovered that there's been a chain of infidelity. And that broke me, given, the fact that I've been committed. I was continuously reminded that I'm not good enough. I was continuously reminded that, I say in Xhosa, umdaka.
So how many months in would you say you realize that it's developing into a relationship?
Less than a month.
Sure.
Yeah.
Less than a month in. The show is Engineer Your Life, and I'm Lungelo. Okay, if you're new here, welcome. But I'm being kind by welcoming you because I'm judging you. In fact, where have you been? This is a platform where we have growth conversations. We have conversations with people who have stories of interest, who have stories which are intricate sometimes, stories that are vulnerable, stories that are relatable, things that you perhaps are going through as well. Somebody you know is going through. I just want to bring a viewer discretion warning for this particular story because it's quite sensitive, as it involves elements of relationships that can be painful. Some could deem them as abusive. Some could deem these situations as highly sacred and just hurtful. So just be wary as you watch this. Perhaps if you're watching with children, just be careful of that too. But the story is very important because it speaks to a reality that many go through, but they are never ever given the platform to speak about this in a manner that is respectful of all parties, in a manner that respects everyone involved, and also in a manner that highlights what perhaps victims go through in such situations. Today's guest is Erwin Meth.
Yes.
Sir, I know this might be a heavy question considering everything that you've gone through in the last couple of years and even in the last couple of days, but how's your heart today?
I feel liberated. I feel free. I feel like I've been able to speak my truth.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything worse than bottling information or experiences all in the name of creating a certain image for yourself.
Sure.
But for me, yeah, I feel like my heart is at much better ease.
Yeah. Would you say you spent a lot of time creating an image so that you protect certain people?
Protection's definitely one of them, but I think for me it was also about focusing on what's more positive and those positive elements in my life that keep driving me to what it is that I ultimately want to achieve. And I think for a lot of people, they may assume that it's a facade because remember, social media platforms are there to, encourage and motivate certain people. And I think I've been able to do that quite well, given my years of, experience in banking, given, my dedication and commitment to developing and growing myself. And I can, reference a few things like, studying at Gibbs, going to Wits Business School and saying that there's a lot more behind, just living a specific lifestyle or being exposed to certain things. And I think for me, it was really about motivating myself and, other young people around me.
Perhaps very important is that we start there because you're a young man who had a dream.
True.
A young man who had hopes, a young man who came from a family who was loved by their family and they wanted to build a life for themselves.
Sure.
How do you find this job at the bank?
So around 1997, I remember the last words I had to my late father was, "Daddy, Daddy, I passed." And little did I know that he was going to pass away because he was feeling ill at the time. And I think throughout, my life, I was one of the first people to actually go the academic route in my family, one of the first people to graduate, one of the first people to get my master's in business administration. And it stemmed from not having a father figure in my life. And, I remember when my mom was even, when my mom had to carry so much weight all in the name of actually raising me and how difficult it was for her. For me, it was really about, making a difference in my life and also at some point in my life, rewarding her for all the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears that she had to go through in raising me.
Yeah.
And, I remember my first year of varsity, I was so excited about that. And, I didn't even have means to study.
Yeah.
You explore the NSFAS options. And I think as someone who comes from a previously disadvantaged family, I didn't have anyone in the family that could help support that, given, what it is that I actually possess.
Yeah.
I remember in matric, even before university, I arrived at a school around November the previous year, and the next year they made me the head boy because they realized I have certain competencies that can inspire and motivate people in the school. And then I think, it was very difficult for me to get through the program because I had to get a job. I had to work extremely hard just to get through school. And that was the most important thing to me. And I remember just having to, at some point in my life, because of my situation, I remember just sitting in a classroom with kids that come from, more privileged backgrounds. And one of them said to me, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And he says, "Because you've been wearing this jacket for the past month." And that was my matric jacket because I didn't
all you had.
I didn't even have the clothes to actually dress up like everyone else. I didn't have a car. I didn't have all these things. And that's really what inspired me to get a job and study at the same time. To cut a long story short, you start off in a call center environment. You start off, in jobs that are very difficult, and, you go into sales, you're moving around, you're navigating this thing. And I remember when I eventually finished my qualification, which was a BCom degree, when I initially studied a BCom in finance. I think the combination of the two, for me was really a way of saying I can be a marketer, but in the financial services industry. I then met a lady by the name of Nolwazi, and she at the time was, I would say, heading, the brand for Nedbank. And I remember having a conversation about her, about what I'm passionate about and my qualifications. And that is the one person that actually opened a door for me.
She believed in you.
She believed in me. And even though she believed in me, it took me almost 6 months of literally begging and knocking and knocking. And eventually, when I had that contract, it was the biggest breakthrough of my life. I went into the bank when so much was happening that, I had to, hit the ground running. And it was interesting because I got to learn so much. That's when Nedbank was actually moving from make things happen to see money differently. And for me, it was a great opportunity to learn. Little did I know that, one day you'd be sitting in a canteen, minding your own business and thinking about, your future. One day I'll be a CMO, inspired by the people around me, because Nedbank in itself is a great organization.
Absolutely.
It does have good people. It has people that are very intelligent. You learn a lot from them. And that for me was the inspiration on its own. Yes. And then, I was in a relationship at the time.
So which year was this?
This was 2017.
2017. You are already in a relationship before you join Nedbank. In the marketing role. And in 2017, I think I was already 10 years in my relationship. And as previously alluded, you're sitting in the canteen, minding your own business, and you're just so proud to be in this space. And, this gentleman walks up to me, well-suited, well-spoken, and you just realize that, I'm now in the right environment where I'm being exposed to certain networks of people. But it was a very brief conversation because obviously I had to work and that's where my focus was. But I think a week or two later, I received an email. The face looked familiar, but I couldn't really remember who this person was. Subsequent to that, I think I was happy to have the engagement because you look at the title and you think, okay, this is a leadership role and I could potentially learn from this person. This could be a mentor. That's what's ringing in your head.
Absolutely. And I think for me, that relationship started becoming more of a personal relationship. So it's not just a colleague, it's now a friend. One thing leads to another. It then becomes that father figure that you've never had in your life. And I think given that, the age gap between us was almost 10 years or so, I just saw someone that was more matured, that was much older, that's going to, help me progress in my career. And I think shortly after that, I then realized that it's way more than a friendship or even a colleague. This is now developing into a relationship.
So how many months in would you say you realize that it's developing into a relationship?
Less than a month.
Sure.
Yeah.
Less than a month in.
Correct.
So from that first email, or from that first sighting rather, where you met in the canteen, till the relationship, it only took a month.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I say this because I think it was a very well-spoken person who knew how to pursue me. And I think for me, it was just a matter of, I'm in a 10-year relationship. I was not happy there. Things weren't going well. And, now I've got someone who's willing to take me out on those lunches, willing to help me, even financially. And even though I had a job, I think I was amongst one of the people that was not paid a certain salary because I lacked the experience. So it was me still trying to survive. And I think given how I take infidelity and all these things seriously, I chose to move out of the house that I lived with my partner. Biggest move of my life. And little did I know that this was going to be the start of a tumultuous relationship. So my understanding was that this person is married. However, they are going through a separation. So when it developed into a relationship, my understanding was that this person is no longer with their partner. And I took their word. Moments later, and I think this was months later, I received a complaint from HR, and the complaint
Still in 2017.
Still in 2017.
Sheesh, a lot is happening.
So a lot is happening.
Yeah.
I'm new in my career, and I'm thinking, geez, this is actually going to bastardize my brand, my reputation. And how do I fix it? I never imagined myself being dragged into courts, and that's literally what happened. I was being dragged. I was accused of being a pedophile because I think she was so desperate to either save the marriage or,
Who's she?
me from. I think in the interest of protecting that person, I wouldn't want to mention on this show.
Okay.
But for me, it became even worse when her best friend was hired in my team.
Okay.
So the best friend then started disclosing information to her
about your relationship,
about my relationship with. It was then, once that was disclosed, it just caused so much toxicity within the working environment because now you're being discriminated for being gay. You're a home wrecker. And, for me, it became increasingly difficult working in that environment.
Yeah.
You're working in an environment where you're surrounded by married women, married men, and, you look a certain way, you present a certain image, and you start making people uncomfortable around you. And that's what happened in my situation, where as a result of this, I found myself being excluded from so many projects and campaigns. And it was like I literally had to navigate the working environment to find meaningful work for me to do. So yeah, I think for me, it was really about navigating opportunities within the bank and building certain relationships outside of my team. Just so that it could feel like I'm, creating impact and something meaningful for myself. And I think it extended beyond just the bank and working closely with our agency partners, just so that I could, continue to fix that reputation that I had. Shortly after she found out, I think it took about, months after that for me to continue this relationship with this person. And, a few years later, or let me rather say within 3 years, it was a relationship where I would literally have to accept that I'm with someone who has to leave me and be with a family and I'm expected to be fully committed. I think that broke me because I realized that I wanted more than that.
So there was no separation
There was
happening.
no separation between
That
the two.
was a lie.
Correct.
And in these few months it's ruining your reputation, it's ruining your career. When you look back, why are you staying? Because a few months in, it's easier to exit rather than a few years later.
Yep.
When you look back, why am I in this and continuing to remain in this? Is it love? Is it a void that you are filling?
I think it was both. So the void stemmed from a relationship of 10 years. That's what you're used to. That's all you know. And I think for me, I was always afraid of being alone. And as previously mentioned, I never had a father figure in my life. And I think that void was one of the reasons I stayed. But little did I know that I've actually created this idea of having a father figure in my life that's become abusive to me. The verbal abuse was the worst, because that just broke me. I was continuously reminded that I'm not good enough. I was continuously reminded that, I say in Xhosa, umdak, and those things just made me question myself. And, I found myself in a situation where, you think, is this person normal? Is this person bipolar? Like, the behavior is not making sense. I'm dealing with someone who's schizophrenic. The one moment you love me, the next moment you hate me. And I think, like any other victim of abuse, you stay because that person's been able to kind of master you, where your weaknesses are, and I think he kind of leveraged off that with the understanding that there is a void. And the scariest part is that you find yourself loving that person more than you love yourself, that you're willing to give up certain things just to protect them, just to make them happy. And, the possessiveness started because I couldn't have relationships at work with other male figures because then I was accused of having something with them. And I think later on in life, I got to learn that it was actually not about me. It was about the things that this person is doing. And what he's doing is actually making him insecure. Fast forward, into the relationship, I then discovered that there's been a chain of infidelity. And that broke me given, the fact that I've been committed.
Is this year 1, year 2, year 3?
It was in year 1.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was quite early. I was in the relationship for almost 7 years, but in that 7-year period, I was told, leave me alone. I don't want to be with you. I can't live without you. And it was just a back and forth. I'd go from, being in a situation where I'm confident that this person will at some point accept who they are, accept their sexuality. And he knew the type of person I am. I love children. And at some point, he manipulated me to such a point where he used the child to bring me closer and push me away. So, let's have lunch with the kid. And he knew I was excited about that because family for me is important. And if we're going to have anything, I want to be in a family oriented environment. It became increasingly difficult to leave when I then was introduced to his family, I think around year 4. Because now I started building relationships with the family. And I think what I started to question was he came from a very decent, well-privileged family. He went to Hilton College. You're born in the 70s. That in itself is a privilege.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think given that, it just made it even harder for me to leave, even if I believed I had to do it. Around the year 3 or 4, we then purchased a property, and
He's married still.
Still married.
Yeah.
Still going through the divorce.
Okay, so now there's a divorce that has started.
Correct.
Okay.
So I've never pushed him into leaving the wife. I've always just
But you were happy?
taken the role. I was never happy.
Really?
From year 1.
That he's leaving the wife, you were not happy?
I was not happy. It didn't sit well on me, but
Okay.
I didn't have enough context
Okay.
to decide what's best or not.
Sure.
I mean, I never had conversations with him about his marriage. He was a very secretive person. And I think him being secretive is what made me understand that it's important for me to actually understand what I'm putting myself into. And I think, given that, if anyone were to say something about this person if he died, I wouldn't know what to say, because I always felt like I didn't really know who you are. And I think it probably stemmed from his sexuality and having to hide things his whole life. But I'm no psychologist or psychiatrist to come up with those conclusions. So I think for me, what was important now is trying to understand who this person really is. And you then find yourself in a position or in a relationship where you now need to dig. And in digging, I think I discovered some of the most shocking things.
You buy a property year 3. You were there. Yeah.
Year 3, it's not a purchase, but it's a rental.
Okay.
But, we move into waterfall. He tasked me with making sure everything was sorted out. And yeah, it was a lot of work, balancing work, my academics, but also making sure his life is together, And I mean, you're obviously excited about that, because now
we're
it's a
stabilizing.
relationship.
It's a
Yeah,
relationship.
it's a
Yeah.
relationship that you don't have to hide.
Yeah.
Or feel bad for, because you don't know what this person is doing when, they're at home. But then I also got to realize, in year 1, when he claimed to be at home and he doesn't want to talk to me, that he was actually at hotels visiting his exes, and a whole lot of other things were happening, which was very traumatizing for me. Yeah.
But you still continue to move in with him at year 3. What are you hoping is changing then? Because if you're saying you had identified all these traits that were toxic between the two of you, why are you still pursuing this stable relationship with him 3 years in?
It goes back to what we discussed earlier. It's the void, and the fact that, after a few years of it, you start loving that person. And, the relationships I started building with the daughter made it even more difficult, because I started having a very good relationship with the daughter. And, I remember a time when I decided to leave, she was so attached to me that she would say, "Uncle Erwin, please don't leave." And then I started picking up behavior from him, that was very abusive, to such an extent that even if we were having lunch or dinner, the child would reprimand him for saying, "But, Uncle Owen's just asking a question, Dad, you don't have to be rude." And I never understood the aggression and the anger and where it was coming from. But, later on, when I then started searching, I realized that this person has been cheating on me with multiple individuals, including people that worked for the very same organization where I walked confidently thinking that this is my partner. To such a degree that I discovered information where people were sending nude images to him. Quite a number of people that I even knew socially. And for me, it was so traumatizing to an extent that I started questioning myself. Am I not good enough?
Sure.
What's wrong with me?
Sure.
And the moment you get into that situation, you feel the need and the desire to keep proving that you're better than the people that they're cheating on you. And, you find yourself even working harder for the relationship. The abuse was so intense that I would always look for a distraction. And that distraction was register at Gibbs, at some point I was registered at 2 institutions at the same time, because
you thought you were being productive.
Yeah. To keep my mind busy.
Sure.
Instead of focusing on this relationship. And more than anything, I think I just wanted to be independent again. And my financial situation still didn't allow that, even as someone who's in a managerial role at work. Going back to work, you now trying to negotiate increases because your work ethic is so good. I really worked hard at Nedbank. And I think, the HR person who knew about the relationship, who knew about, the difficulties that I'm faced with, they were not supportive. They were not supportive. to such a degree that, I had to use the resources I have. And one of them being a platform where you can actually have conversations with online psychologists. And I did that.
Yeah.
So I was very proactive in terms of, now focusing on my mental health and making sure that, I become a better person.
Sure.
Because right now I realized as an older person that this is not love.
Would you say, because you're saying you felt like your career was being capped,
Yes.
you weren't earning enough,
Yes.
you weren't being promoted
Yes.
adequately, would you say he had an influence on that?
I would not want to speak subjectively. I don't know. I always prefer sticking to facts. And I kind of assumed, given that I'm with someone more senior at the bank, that probably irked a few people. So that for me was career limiting in itself.
Okay.
And I found that now I was excluded from work events. I was never invited to golf, even though I worked on it. I was never invited to the trips in Cape Town, even though I was working on a project or campaign. And, because I was in a relationship with him, it's almost like I had to navigate the opportunity of being with someone senior and, being there plus one at the golf challenge. And I just found that every time I attended a work function, it's almost like I attended as a guest,
Sure.
as an external guest versus
Sure.
someone who's part of this team.
Yeah.
Because of the narrative that's been built around me. And that for me was very difficult because I enjoyed the culture at Nedbank. I enjoyed the work that I was doing, and I never even applied for another job for quite a number of years. And to cut a long story short, it was so toxic at work that I would even find myself sitting in certain boardrooms just to keep myself busy or stay away from the toxic environment. But with all the abuse that I was now faced with at home and the abuse that I'm faced with at work, it became increasingly challenging for me. That, to some extent, when, we were in this home that we've now built, and this person just felt the need to kick me out when it suited them, because of maybe the infidelities or the new partner that's come in, that I now found myself even sleeping in my car. 2023, I started my first year of my MBA and I felt I never received the support that I deserved. I remember even going for an exam and I brushed my teeth in the boot of my car. It was so difficult for me. But at the same time, you have a certain image to maintain on social media. I realized that I need to do something about this.
Why were you kicked out of the house on the multiple instances?
Because of arguments. I was not allowed to ask any questions. Even if I wanted to understand where are you with the divorce, who is this person that you're cheating on me with? The moment you have those conversations, you are kicked out. To such a degree that I realized I'm dealing with someone who's not okay. And I took it upon myself to reach out to his family and get support, because I realized that something was wrong, fundamentally wrong. I don't know much about this person's upbringing. I don't know anything about this person. And in reaching out to the family, I was told that you're not married to him. We don't owe you our loyalties. That broke me. That broke me. To such a degree that because I had spoken to the family, you're a narcissist. Your image is so important. You are senior at the bank. You dress in suits. You look good. Those were the things that I think made the situation even worse for me.
You were told that?
Correct.
By the family?
Correct.
Sure.
Correct. Which made it very, very difficult for me. I think shortly after that, because I had discovered things that I had never anticipated, would be who this person is. I realized because it extended in the work environment. I have a certain mandate in the bank. There are policies. The bank is very conservative compared to most industries. And it was rightfully within my mandate to report any form of misconduct. And I did that because no one can work for a large financial institution and you see fraud and you just keep quiet about it and sweep it under the carpet. I'm all about, being ethical. We speak about the values of the bank, and for me, I always took those things very seriously. In an effort to help this person, because I realized that the behavior is not changing. I realized that this person is doing certain things, and if the family can't help me, who else can? And perhaps maybe having a conversation with someone at the bank is going to be a slap on the hand for him. And I then decided to go into Tip-Offs Anonymous and, report some of the findings that I've had, because it was misconduct, if not gross misconduct. And in doing so, little did I know that the very same bank that has certain policies in place that speaks about whistleblowing and how they protect you, using PDA, etc., decided to sit in a forum and disclose that I was the one who reported this information. I was now kicked out as a dog permanently from the house. I found myself in a position where it got so bad that I was now even forced to sign a mutual separation agreement.
From the bank?
From the bank.
So a mutual separation agreement is a contract where an employer and an employee lay out conditions for them to part ways.
Correct.
Based on those conditions.
Correct.
Let me put it that way.
Yes. However, the MSA in itself was highly prejudicial, in the sense that there was a lack of accountability from even the Human Resources Department, because they are well aware of the situation that I'm in. They are well aware of the challenges that I have. However, they decided to use certain things to frame me as a problem or to get rid of me. And one of them being a private trip that I had taken to Sun City on my personal capacity. During that trip, my estranged partner, was attacked by people during, our stay, because of some of the mistakes that the resort had made in terms of bookings. And I mean, when we first arrived, we were told that he must sleep on the couch, even though it was a 2-bedroom for 2 staff members. And I think for me, it was, at first I chuckled about it because I didn't take it seriously. But I think given how that person responded, I didn't think much of it. And then, shortly after that, we struggled. We had a group of 10 white men that entered, the room. And I didn't know if it was a racial thing, because, there's 2 black men that are in the room. They've got their luggage there, and I think they were well within their rights to panic. And we were attacked. I mean, he was taking a shower at the time, and he was confronted naked. He's a senior staff member at the bank, and these are junior bankers. And it became physical at some point. And for me, with all the physical abuse, the emotional abuse that I've already endured, I just reached a point where I was like, this is just too much. Shortly after that, we went back, we reported the matter to Sun City. Nothing was done about that. And it made me then question, is it a racial thing? Where the very next day, I then negotiated with the resort to actually make a payment, because I was also concerned about him. I felt he was vulnerable. I needed to be there. I had no intention of staying on the resort overnight. And that's just the person I am. I care. Little did I know that it's just going to create even more issues for me. So the very next day, we were locked out of our room. Didn't think much about it. Went to reception, had a conversation, and one thing led to another. From being told that, no, you can sleep in the couch, to being exposed to violence and abuse on the resort. I only felt, given it's a hospitality business, that they had a duty of care, which they failed to do. I was livid. I spoke to the manager. They didn't help. They were like, it's your business. You come into a resort, people consume alcohol. People are there to have fun, and that's probably part and parcel of why these men that came into the room were aggressive, because they had probably also consumed alcohol. Shortly after the Sun City experience, we were told that, we understand you were angry. We understand that, you slammed the phone on the manager because you upset. We'll just leave this. All you need to do is pay for your accommodation and the phone that was broken. And yes, I mean, I said words like BS. This is BS. It's unacceptable. It's 2 nights in a row and I've suffered. And yeah, little did I know, a day or two later, when we've reached an amicable solution with the resort, that they are going to selectively use footage and an audio and send it to the bank. And they were not clear about how this was distributed. That later on I realized that even the bank went to an extent of accepting a tainted report and an edited video footage to then define me as unruly and violent. I did not know how to take all of it. It was just too much.
Why are you insistent on saying this is a private trip? Because here, why does the bank get involved if you say it's a private trip? Because in the public court documents and the recent judgment of yourself against Sun City, the bank, and your former partner, there are mentions of you being violent and breaking the phone at reception. It's also said that the event was the Nedbank Golf Challenge. So are you not there as an employee as well?
No, I was not there as an employee. I was there as a private guest. And as previously alluded, I was excluded from so many events at work.
Okay.
In any case. I mean, it's midnight on a Sunday. I was not on duty. And, that being explained to the bank didn't mean anything for them, because we want to get rid of you anyway. So that was used to force me into signing this MSA to such a degree that, I ended up in a psychiatric hospital, which I never imagined for myself. And I stayed there for a good month. And, despite being in hospital, I was harassed by the HR person. I was told to log on. I was told to put my sick leave onto the system. I was told that if you don't report or sign this document, we will, escalate the matter. And for me, it was such a difficult period in my life, to such an extent that I even wished I could have just taken my own life. And yes, I had attempted suicide at some point because it was just becoming too much for anyone to carry. And, during that time, I even remember, after that full 3 weeks of being in that psychiatric clinic, going back home to the same abuser, it took less than a week for me to end up right back into a kiso because I just couldn't take it anymore. I remember on the day where I was supposed to be admitted, and I called my estranged partner to say, I need financial assistance. They are demanding a few thousands of rands in order for them to admit me. Can you please help me out? And that in itself was just such an aggressive phone call that even when it was on loudspeaker, someone sitting next to me was so disturbed by the level of aggression. And yes, I was admitted, and despite my admission, the bank still found it necessary to put a salt on the wound and make things difficult for me. I was harassed to such an extent that I was even asked to sign documents which were acknowledgements of debt, because they had paid for the first year of my MBA studies. And I think it just got to such a point that I was like, it's too much. Let me rather focus on this MBA, finish this MBA, and call it a sabbatical. And little did I know that that wasn't even the best move, because 2 years later you find yourself unemployed because you've either been, inverted commas, blacklisted or red listed. And I reached out to the bank to say, have I been blacklisted or red listed? Because every interview I go to, it's successful. I remember even one of the financial services organizations was actually in the process of sending me a contract, but by the moment it reached their HR department, they decided they're not going to proceed. So I started questioning if I've been blacklisted in the industry. What's going on? Have I done something wrong? And 2 years later, you're in debt for the second year of your MBA of 250,000 Rand. The bank has, informed my ex that, I've reported them, and now he's starting to get his lawyers on me. And it just became such a difficult situation that, there were restraining orders against me, and now I'm expected to pay his legal fees. And, he's actually using the legal system to further victimize me even after I've left the relationship. Through God's grace, I had a property in Four Ways, and I had to ask one of my tenants to leave because I had nowhere to stay. Even though I asked my tenant to leave, I still had to survive. I had no income. And I never anticipated that a year later, almost 2 years, I still don't have an income. And despite the fact that you've performed so well on your MBA and your thesis or dissertation is being chosen to be published, it's still not enough for you to secure a job. Shortly after that, this year, around March, a newspaper article is released.
Sure.
The newspaper article,
Sunday Times,
front page.
Yes.
Sunday Times painted me as something I was not. And that being said, every job opportunity I went to, when they did their due diligence,
which is Google your name.
Yes.
That's the first thing that comes up.
That's the first thing they do, and sadly the article's the first thing that comes up.
Sure.
And no one was comfortable hiring me. So you're waking up every day, you're staring at the ceiling. That drove me into deeper depression. I don't have a medical aid. I need to survive. I need to, get medication. I don't have the means for it. What's the next best thing? You need to think, how do you use your resources? So I realized in my entire life, I've always been on survival mode. Survive, survive, survive. What do I then do? I Airbnb my property. The days it's booked, I can't drive all the way home, which is a long drive, and come back into Joburg. So the next best option is to sleep in your car. My car became my home. The saddest thing ever. And when your guests leave, you have now become a person who needs to be washing towels and literally cleaning up the space. And I start asking myself, how did I end up here? When I had all these big dreams, when I've worked so hard, laboriously, for an organization that I was so passionate about. And, having to do that was so, for me, it was so degrading. But I still have an image to maintain. And shortly after that, it's no longer my battle with my estranged partner. It's my battle with the bank. They want to come after the house. They want to come after the car. They want to come after everything. They want to sequestrate me. And how do I find a job if I'm sequestrated? How do I start a business as a director if I've been sequestrated? My partner was then given a writ of execution, which that in itself could easily lead me to being sequestrated. I'm in financial turmoil. I don't even know what it's like to visit my family in Durban because I can't afford that. My family, comprises of 5 individuals. My mom, who's a widow with her 4 kids, one being disabled, who depended on me financially, and now don't have an income, and they had to suffer. They had to suffer. That was the most painful thing for me, is that I was not in a position to do things for people, and that was very hard for me. Um, you know, I'm now in a position where the bank is fighting me, and I have, a team or council that is saying we are willing to help you on contingency because you've been treated very badly. It was on that day I realized how bad it was, because I remember sitting at the chambers, and I looked across the table, and I could actually see one of the lawyers tearing, because we went into the detail of what happened to me at Nedbank from the time I started. And for me, it was just survival. But for them, it was like, but no human being deserves to be treated like this. You were violated in so many ways. And the people who violated me are people who breached the bank's policies, and yet they still have jobs. The most painful thing is to see the very same people who have violated me living their best lives on social media, boasting about their careers, boasting about their earnings, and it just kept breaking me. Then you find yourself in a situation where, the life and the image that I'm trying to create is not helping, because there's a newspaper article, you've already been defamed and degraded publicly to such an extent that, when a judgment was granted, I realized that we're dealing with so many systemic failures in this country, where justice in itself is an issue, where large corporations, people are getting away with so many things. There's so many cracks in the system that, as someone who is able to identify these things and report these things, you end up becoming a target. By blowing the whistle, you become the target. Whistleblowing is a serious thing in this country, and people have lost their lives. I lived in fear. I could never even move because I was scared. I remember even meeting my partner, my estranged partner, in a restaurant when I decided to actually take a drive and go out and at least start dealing with the world. And because I was at that restaurant, he picked up the phone, called his lawyers, and he accused me of harassment and all these things. And I never even had a conversation with him. So, using the legal system to manipulate me, to quiet and silence me, was making it even more difficult, because now I can't even move. That being said, I got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. The judgment in itself was so biased that you realize these large corporates abuse us. These large corporates have the financial muscle to frustrate you and not take what I've been through seriously and treat it with the sensitivity it deserves. They don't do that. And behind the brand is an individual who abuses their power and authority, utilizing the bank's resources, not taking into account that there's someone who lives, who's disadvantaged, that has to repay a loan every month, working hard, paying interest. And you, given the authority that you have, find it necessary to just use that and pay lawyers who are involved in unscrupulous dealings, wastage. People are struggling. And you cannot claim to be a money expert who does good when you operate like that. And I think for me, that was my breaking point. I had enough.
I represent the viewer, and as much as you are explaining in great detail what happened to you, it's important that, and I'm sure you've done this because you are a very intelligent man, that you've reflected on what your part has been in contributing into everything that has happened. And the viewer is out there asking themselves, but Erwin, he was married. What do you think are the consequences of going into a relationship with the married man? Two, he is your boss in inverted commas. He might not directly be your boss, but through the tales of time, we've been told, don't date at work. And not just on a moral basis, but because the consequences are so deep and complicated as what you are facing right now. Aren't you thinking perhaps even the HR lady, the people from the ethics committee, the lawyers in the bank from legal, you put them in a predicament by staying in this relationship where you had so many chances to exit?
Sure. I definitely had that conversation with myself. Accountability is important. And I asked myself, but what was my role? And my role around the relationship and the marriage was a very challenging one in the sense that I was with someone who was deceptive to me about so many things. With the inclusion of the separation, with the inclusion of, being told, and I quote inverted comma, verbatim, the wife is behaving like this because it's the last kicks of a dying horse. There is no intimacy in that relationship. There's nothing. So I believed him. And in believing someone that was deceptive, I realized that, but there were certain things that I realized about this person, and I should have just made that decision to walk away. I walked away a few times, but then I was pulled right back in. And when I was pulled back in, I thought there would be change. I thought there'd be more transparency, but I was not getting that. I did not feel proud about being with someone who's still legally married. I come from a family with a 0% divorce rate. So it's not something I'd ever wish on someone else. But I was also sensitive to the fact that this person is actually homosexual. This person was probably suffering their whole lives trying to, hide who they are. And I think for me, that's what also kept me, is that I felt sorry for him. Going back to, the work question around, dating at work and how difficult it was for people. People in the bank are married. There are people who, they've met at work and the relationships, turned into marriage. I was just one of those unfortunate people.
Got you.
I was just one of those people who ended up with someone who's, there's infidelity in the workplace. This is a senior person where I questioned, the relationships he had with certain graduates when I would, walk to the canteen and meet him sitting there with the graduate. But later on discovered that there's more to those relationships at work, in the sense that there were inappropriate messages. There were images of naked people, in the legal department at the bank. That was very disturbing for me. And, that in itself was very painful, is that I chose to trust this person when the signs were there, and that I take full accountability for. It may have been difficult for people at work, but I think having a conversation rather than punishing me for it is more human. The way I was treated was so bad that it affected my mental health.
A few days ago, you've taken the route of publishing legal documents such as J88 forms. That's, for those who don't know, in the South African Police Service, they give you a J88 form if you believe or you are alleging or opening a case against someone of either being sexually assaulted or just normal common assault. And you were publishing such documents on your Instagram. Why now?
The suffering was too much. And I needed time to reflect, and I think I was also hoping that the suffering would end, but it just continued, the writs of execution. I constantly had sheriffs knocking on my door. It became too much for anyone to handle. I was literally living from, hand to mouth. Eating bread for the whole week. And, you leave your home to be in spaces where, your friends are living a better life, and, just the opportunity of having lunch in a restaurant is through someone else. And that wasn't who I am. I always wanted to take care of the next person. And I just got to a boiling point because, as previously mentioned, the judgment, where I was at least hoping that the bank would take accountability for the role they've played and financially, put me in a better position. They then decided even that is something they don't owe me. And for me, I also realized it was so biased that the only way to actually overcome this thing is to speak my truth. An article was released which further painted me as a bad person. And that for me was like, I need to fight.
Mm-hmm.
I need to fight. The J forms, all of that stemmed from the fact that this is a matter my partner, estranged partner, decided to take to the High Court. The High Court provides publicly available documents. Even if my due diligence was done, even a prospective employer will pick it up. It's public. So having a public document that narrates his story is what disadvantaged me even further.
I hear you.
So the onus is now on me to share the truth. People turned their backs on me. I was labeled an abusive partner. I was labeled things that are not a true reflection of who I am. And that broke me. It's one thing to take away a person's identity, but it's another thing to take away a person's, financial means. And for me, I was stripped of everything. I had nothing. My dignity was gone. My finances were a mess. It was just too much.
Once again, I come on the prospect of the viewer in helping you take accountability for the part that you played, because this is not a smear campaign. Your Instagram has a very luxurious life.
Yeah.
Your Instagram has the Porsches and the horses,
yeah.
if I use the colloquial language. Once again, Erwin, did you not burn your own house down by wanting to live the high life at all costs?
So, in all honesty, I had a job. I had a disposable income. I lived with my partner. It meant that I had a little bit more money. And living with a partner who's, a lot more financially stronger than I am,
sure,
meant that I had access to certain things. But it didn't necessarily mean that he was supporting my lifestyle fully. No, I had a job. I studied hard. My lean earnings were easier to manage in a situation where you have someone else who's taking care of certain things in the house. I also go back to the fact that I'm a marketing person. I'm in a creative industry. I'm a resourceful person. I know how to take certain images. I know how to be creative on those platforms despite my circumstances. This person was not financially supportive towards me. In actual fact, when I had asked for money, he went to a law firm to draft a contract and made me sign when I needed money from him, which I questioned, because if you're going to a commercial law firm that deals with much bigger issues like Fluxman's attorneys, you then question how much did he actually pay to draft this if he's giving me X amount of money. And that in itself made me question, but why am I in this relationship? There's no financial benefit. There's no emotional benefit. Why am I here? Just to have a roof over my head? But with the level of abuse, is it worth it? And that was part of one of the reasons I left. Even after the relationship, I was still able to use the resources around me to continue with the image that I've created because of the people that I've known around me who are a lot more advantaged than I am. And that's basically what it was.
We're nearing the end of our conversation. Are you doing this conversation with me because you are bitter and you just can't get over him?
I wouldn't say I can't get over him. I am over him.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I've worked on myself, and it's taken time. There were times where I would, find myself crying, wanting to maybe fix things. But then I realized it's going to do so much more damage.
Sure.
And I think even when I was informed that he's now in a relationship with someone much younger than me, I think almost 2 decades younger than what he is, respectfully, I asked people to just stop telling me about him. I don't want to hear. I need to move on with my own life. But knowing that I'm not ready for a relationship because of the things I need to deal with.
Sure.
I'm over this person.
Sure.
Trust me.
Sure.
But I think even legally, my lawyers would ask, maybe this person still wants you back. Why are they doing all of this? It's almost like he wants to show me that I'm nothing without you. I will make sure that you have nothing. And those are the things that just made me realize that I would never want to be with someone like that ever again in my life. And I always felt that maybe the fact that I was a homosexual has been the biggest curse in my life.
I disagree with you on that fully. And I'll stand my ground in disagreeing with you because there are many healthy homosexual relationships, people who have been intentional about their healing, people who have been intentional about loving each other, about balance in their relationships. And I hope in your journey, as you continue to heal, that you realize that there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. You met the wrong person at the wrong time, perhaps. And just dwell on that. What outcome do you want from all of this? Because if I were you, I'm thinking, just leave me alone and let me start over. Am I correct in saying that's what you want now?
That's very, very much correct, because I just can't move. I think in the past 2 years, nothing in my life is progression. It's like I'm regressing. And when I say leave me alone, it's like, can I just move forward with my life? So many years wasted. And yet I'm still stuck in this pit of hell. I just want to get out of it. On the note of homosexuality, when I say I feel it was the biggest curse in my life, is because of the victimization I faced at work.
Sure.
It was because the infidelity in itself is such a big thing publicly because of my homosexuality.
I get you.
And, it's
exaggerated.
It's exaggerated.
Sure.
Because, oh my goodness, you've had an affair with a married man and it's a gay relationship, and it just made it look toxic.
Sure.
I mean, there are heterosexual people that have affairs.
Correct.
But I don't think it would have been presented in the angle that they've presented my situation. So that's where it really stems from when I say that it's been the biggest curse in my life.
Where to from now?
With everything going on, I don't know.
Sure. And that's a fair answer.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've just gotten to a point where I'm like, you live and figure it out every day. You'll figure it out every day.
Mr. Meth, thank you. Geez, I don't want to use the word privilege, but I use it a lot. I think it's a privilege to have your time. Everyone's time is important. It's valuable. But I really, really hope that God, more than anything, because some situations are beyond us, God intervenes with His grace, His favor, His restorative power to be able to take you out of the pit of hell because you used those words. And I don't think anyone deserves to be in a pit of hell. One of my favorite scriptures is that God is close to those who are brokenhearted. Lean on God and lean on your family, because our mothers are there even if we don't have money for them.
Yeah.
Lean on those people who love you and who think the world of you. And I hope for you to get the justice that you deserve in the instances where you feel you've been prejudiced. So thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you, Lunga. I appreciate you having me on the show. And, in closing, you speak about, God. And I think more than anything, it's also brought me closer to Him. I find myself spending a lot of time, around spirituality and praying and meditating on certain things. So yeah, I think this interview in itself and closing it off with that is just a reminder that God is in control.
Sure.
And I think for the longest time, I've tried to control my life and how it's going to unfold, but I've left everything to Him.
Powerful message from Mr. Erwin Meth, who says that for the longest time, he tried to lead his life using his own intelligence and own wisdom. But now that he's let go and he surrendered his life to God, he sees that there is hope for a new beginning. He was once in complete darkness, but now there is light. There is platforms like this where he can help you, even if he's not able to help himself yet. He can help you who's watching, who's consuming this conversation, who's going through the same thing. Perhaps you with a much older person who's using their resources to possibly intimidate you. Perhaps you're in a relationship where the scales are so imbalanced and you don't know how to exit. Let this be the strength you need to leave that toxic relationship. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and continue sharing the episode with others. I'll see you next time. Bye.